Hey everybody, welcome back to the GoudaGP podcast. Today we are talking about the start of silly season. We've got a lot of rumours coming out of the rumour mill already. We're not even at summer break yet. I am joined by Bradley. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, very well. Obviously, just been away on holiday straight after Silverstone. So, obviously, some news that's come out in recent days I've not been able to obviously react to properly. So it's good to finally get that chance here today.
I mean, yeah, I think we should hop straight into possibly the top story of possibly the season, but I don't know, we might have some other things to talk about that might trump it. And that is Christian Horner being sacked after 20 years at Red Bull. I mean, I think maybe people would have saw this coming after last year with all the controversy, but I wouldn't have expected it to come now. I would have expected it to be then. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, seeing the news online, obviously in Spain, yeah, it was an interesting one. I think it was a moment we probably weren't expecting now. I think if this had happened this time last year, given some of the rumours that had been occurring at the start of the season, um, then I think we would have been less surprised than we were now. But obviously, performances this season haven't been great from Red Bull compared to, previous seasons, 23 in particular. Um,
Mm.
it's one of those. It's potentially one of the more interesting moves we've seen. I know we've seen a lot of team principal changes in recent years, but this has the potential to potentially be the most interesting one. Obviously, they had replacements lined up. Obviously, having a sister team helps with that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's one of those that I wasn't prepared to see after Silverstone, to say the least.
Yeah, I found this one to be quite a weird one. Like, obviously, you can talk about results, but then you can also look back at, I believe it was 2015. It didn't have a great car then. They kept him. So there's clearly something else there because he's been there a long time that you'd argue that maybe he would leave on his own terms. I think that's possibly the only way people saw him exiting Red Bull, not to be pushed out the door. Um, so yeah, I mean, this one when it, I got more messages about this than any other rumor we're talking about today. I even got it off people who don't even watch F1, which yeah, really did send shockwaves, and I think this is just a massive shock in general, which obviously leaves only a couple people left from that 2021 championship in that Red Bull team. Why do you think there's just so much personnel change at the moment?
I mean, it's one of those. I mean, we see it quite often. Dominant teams eventually get broken up as people look to find new challenges. Um, I mean, like you say about performance-related issues. I mean, Red Bull have had worse seasons. I mean,
Yeah,
2015, you look to where they didn't win a race. Um, he survived that, and now 10 years later, he doesn't isn't surviving what is, by all accounts, still a pretty decent season
mm.
for Red Bull when you consider, other than one win by Merck, Max has taken most of the non-McLaren wins, and so to see Horner leave, I think it's just sort of a process of Red Bull realizing they need to adapt and they need to do something because it's clear they're losing their grip at the front of the grid, especially this season. It's just whether they can. It's the new regulations provide an opportunity for them to try and correct that, and I think they need to have change at the top level because ultimately, without change at the top, change at the bottom will be meaningless. So making these big, meaningful changes at the top now potentially will help them progress in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got no way and no nothing to back this up, but I'm just going to throw this out into the open. Do you think this has something to do with the second driver's seat? Obviously, we've seen a lot of drivers step into that car, struggle, and now that it's pretty public knowledge that everyone's just kind of like, yeah, Yuki's doing his best. He's not a bad driver. It's literally just the car when Max is up there. Do you think that's had something to do with it? Obviously, we've never seen this in recent year in Formula One, where you've got one great driver and a driver struggling, and everyone is attributing it to the car as opposed to the person. Um, I mean, that's the only thing I could think of because obviously Horner will pull the strings on contracts. his biggest priority would be to keep Max happy. Obviously, he's got Max and Jos to kind of impress, to kind of keep him at the team, and he will make those decisions. And maybe he is the one saying, make sure Max's car is the best it can be. That second car can kind of float behind, but try not to get too far behind. And obviously, it has got too far behind. But yeah, that I've got I've got nothing to back that up. But I just thought I'd throw it out in the open, get your reactions to that. Could that be something that attributed to Horner's exit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it will have a part to play. I feel like there'll be a lot of different things that have had a role to play, and it's a combination and multitude of things that have happened. But I think definitely when you look at how many drivers they've gone through, there has to be at some point an admission of failure, essentially, because nothing they've tried has worked with that second seat. And so they need to obviously step back and analyse the problem from its roots. And if that comes to a fundamental change of the car, and that might take them a step backwards in performance with Max initially for them to have a better team performance in the future, I think it's a step they might have to sort of grin and bear. However, obviously that comes with the risk of Max not wanting to grin and bear it. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, what Red Bull are trying to prevent. And even then, I don't know if they'll be able to prevent it, given obviously the other rumours we've seen so far this season and rumours we'll discuss. But
Yeah.
ultimately, trying to preserve one man's success has led to ultimately a degradation of the whole team's performance as a result.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd actually like to go straight into that now, and that is Max Verstappen possibly moving to Mercedes. I mean, if you said this a couple of years ago, people go, "Why would he leave Red Bull?" But after the year he's had, I think this is becoming more and more likely. This news has kind of been out for a week, maybe 2 weeks now. These rumors are getting more and more realistic, and it's gone from, oh, I really doubt it. I think we even said this in the Silverstone podcast. We really doubt it.
Hmm.
It's going to happen. But now we're looking at going, I actually see this more likely than him re-signing with Red Bull, which is crazy. And I want to shout out Arava, the F1 YouTuber, because his My Team, I forgot what he called it back in the day. I think it was My Team. His like OG My Team series had Max Verstappen
My
in
driver.
Mercedes. Was it My Driver? That's what it was called. Sorry, I
Yeah.
did not think about it beforehand. His My Driver actually predicted Verstappen in Mercedes, so fair dues to Arif.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's looking more likely. I, for one, still a non-believer at this stage. I
Okay.
still believe he'll stay at Red Bull. Um, I mean, if we look at the performances between Red Bull and Mercedes this season, I feel like Max wouldn't have done any better this season had he been in a Merc than what he's already got. He'll have a few wins, good podiums. Maybe the podiums that Russell's had, he will have as well instead of Russell. So it might have worked out a bit more points wise, but I don't necessarily think he'd be dominating this season. Um, it's one of those. I think at this stage, the McLaren is just too quick for any team. I don't see Max getting into a McLaren anytime soon. Obviously, new regulations, you could say Merc have quite a lot of promise with
Yeah,
engine regulations they've nailed in the past. Potentially, they should nail them again. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see these rumours. I do enjoy reading them. I would love an announcement, ideally whilst I'm not away, because if it happens whilst I'm away, I'm going to be really annoyed. Um, but yeah, if it happens, not soon-ish, but sooner rather than later,
sooner.
in a way, but not too soon.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, with the regulation change, any move that you're going to make is a risk, whether you're staying at the team you're at or moving, because who knows what the grid's going to be next year. Obviously, Mercedes are tipped to be at the top, so could this be Max putting all his eggs in one basket, going, well, if they're tipped to be at the top, I want to be there. Red Bull is not doing it for me anymore. I want to change the scenery, and I'll go there. That could be the case. One of the big things I had pointed out to me, and it's a very good point, I think in previous seasons, if Red Bull had had these issues, we would see a much more angry Max Verstappen. Whereas I feel like we've seen a very composed Max Verstappen, and is that because he just knows the car isn't there, or maybe he's just not invested in the season anymore? Obviously, he knows how quick those McLarens are, or is he just like focused on moving teams? Is that where he's at? Obviously, it could be a multitude of things. Maybe he is behind the scenes really pissed off, and we're just not seeing it. Obviously, he's not usually one to hide his anger, but who knows? And anyone can hide anything. So who knows? He might be angry, but I don't know. I feel like we would see more out of him, especially like with the Austria incident. Obviously, Antonelli hits him. He had the little outburst of what are these idiots doing, but there wasn't much more than that. And I feel like you would normally see a lot more of that out of Verstappen.
I mean, Spain wasn't that long ago. Like, this is still the same man that drove into Russell in Spain. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say he's not angry. I would just necessarily say, ultimately, if he's not fighting for the title, he doesn't really care.
I'd argue though that wasn't a frustration from the car, though. I'd say that's frustration from the FIA decisions.
No FIA decision was made. That was purely the team.
Yeah,
And
but
part
he
of the
would
team's
have.
responsibility is the car.
Yeah, but they would have said that thinking the FIA were going to come after them.
Oh, yeah, that's why they said it. But I mean,
Yeah, so I
ultimately,
would
he had been
attribute it
frustrated
to.
all weekend
Mm.
with how the car was, the strategy, the entire team. I mean, ultimately, to win a championship, he knows it's not just about a car, he needs a team as well. And if the team are underperforming, he will be frustrated. And I mean, to say we've seen quite a calm Max Verstappen, given some of the nature of the incidents we've had, maybe yes, compared to 2018, but he's still, compared to most other drivers on the grid, still very outspoken, still very angry. You can always tell on the radio, whenever he gets on the radio, compared to most drivers, he is more argumentative.
Yeah, it's fair. I don't know. I feel like we'd have more reactions out of him, but that's just my thoughts and opinions. Obviously, we can't talk about this rumor without talking about the plane tracking of Sardinia. I mean, I don't know who is checking these planes and who knows whose planes what. I don't fully understand it, but they I'm just going to say they because I have no clue who it is. Have attributed two planes with Max Verstappen on one and Toto Wolff on the other, both in Sardinia with a bit of overlap. People think that was a meeting with Mercedes, possibly a verbal agreement, maybe even a contract signing. Nobody knows, but that is kind of what people are thinking as of right now. What are your thoughts about this Sardinia rumor?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming the tracking is because they were both Max's and Toto's private jets,
Yeah, but like,
as
what
opposed to
app
like
says
commercial airlines.
whose jets they are? Like,
Well, no, but I suppose if people know the models of the private jets, it's not that difficult necessarily to track it down.
I suppose not.
So it's one of those. I mean, look, I let other people do that. I have way too much things to do with my time than look at a plane tracking app. But for those that want to spend their time doing that, fair play to them. It's an interesting one. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily have to mean anything. And for someone who still doesn't believe this move will happen, it doesn't necessarily mean talks are talks. Like you can talk to anyone. I mean,
Yeah.
having an interest in someone is very different to having a feasible, realistic way to approach them in a serious manner. So it's up to Mercedes, really. If they feel they're gonna, I mean, Max will know Merc will at least be decent in 2026. I don't think we see a situation where Merc are midfield next year.
Hmm.
It's just whether he feels that's less of a risk than the Red Bull seat that he's currently got and will have. I mean, we've seen moves to Mercedes work before, and that will obviously play a part in Max's mind. Obviously, he's seen what Lewis has done there. Um, he'll be hoping for some of that success, but it's really just whether Max has genuine interest in leaving. If he doesn't, he'll stay. If he does, I think Mercedes will do everything they can to try and get him because he is a generational talent, and that's the only way you can describe him.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I kind of want to link this back to Red Bull. If he does go, what does this mean for Red Bull? Can they change the car enough for two different drivers? Obviously, I'd imagine based on kind of there was no rumours at the start of this year. There hasn't been much up until a couple of weeks ago. Have Red Bull already started building this car around Max Verstappen? And if so, how quickly can they adjust this car to make it drivable for two drivers who just don't have Max Verstappen's driving style because nobody has his driving style?
I mean, it's tough for them, but they need to either accept a reality with Max or without Max very soon and commit. Um, if they can figure out a way to change a car radically, if they get surprised or an unexpected move happens, then all the power to them. But we could see a scenario where Red Bull really struggle if they don't get their act in gear. But we've seen Red Bull have poor seasons before, and we've seen them bounce back from it. I mean, we look at 2015 as quite a low point for Red Bull. They were pretty terrible all season, no wins. So it can get worse for them, and it has been worse for them. And they've bounced back from it. So it's not the end of the world. It's just they need to figure out what their plans are for 2026 quickly.
I don't know what the safer bet would be, but if I was in that situation, I think honestly, just as someone who doesn't like the fact that second seat is basically obsolete, like that's probably the worst seat you want to be in. Weirdly, because that's one of the top teams in the sport, and nobody wants that second seat. Obviously, you'd be stupid to decline it, which is why we've had so many drivers go into it from that kind of Toro Rosso Racing Bulls program, whatever you want to call it. Because if you decline it, then what are you doing? But it is the poison chalice of Formula One. It's just not. It's not the seat you want to be in, whether you're the most experienced driver in Sergio Perez or whether you're a rookie who's only just jumped in the car, a general F1 car like Liam Lawson. So I would hope that they go right. It looks like Max could go rather than having two drivers struggle. Let's try and make sure we have something going. So then, if Max does stay, at least that second driver is going to be a bit closer because we know what Yuki can do when he's comfortable in a car. And I think we would not be seeing the gaps that we're seeing right now between him and Verstappen if the car suited him.
Yeah. If you're Max, where would you go?
Merc.
You go Merc.
Yeah, very confidently. I think obviously they've chased you for a long time. A lot of people say the reason he stayed is due to Horner. Obviously, they have a great relationship. With so much personnel change, so many changes in the team in general, and you get an opportunity from the team that is tipped to be the best car going into next season. They have wanted you for a while. They're going to throw so much money at you for you to drive for them. Why wouldn't you go? That's how I see it. Because they know how to win, Mercedes, and they also know how to do an engine regulation change. And they've done it before. I could see them doing it again, going back to kind of that dominant era. Will they be as dominant? I don't think F1 will ever have that sort of dominance again in terms of a team winning that many times. You can clip it and we'll look back at this in 3 years and we'll go, what an idiot. But I don't think we'll have such a dominant era, especially in this regulation era. I don't think we'll be dominated by a team, but I definitely think Mercedes will be up there. I just don't see them plateauing.
Interesting. I mean,
What would you do?
yeah, I get that side of it. I mean, for me, you've got to look. The Red Bull is built for Max, probably.
Mm, yeah.
He is de facto team leader there. He is the number one driver. He comes in, he can control the car development how he likes it. With Merc, if it's not suited to him, he could struggle. And that's 26 wiped out as adapting potentially. Then he'll have to try and direct the development for 27 and onwards. But I feel 26 for 26, Red Bull is a safer bet.
Yeah.
Purely because you know if you stay, the car will be built for what you want and the characteristics that you want. For any other team, their development's already started for the 26 car. And to try and get them to go back and retract and do things differently is costing them time. If I'm Max, I'm staying at Red Bull for 26. I'm seeing who's the top team, and I'm going, do you want to sign me?
Yeah.
And I can't think of a team on the grid, bar maybe McLaren, but even then I think they would, that if Max Verstappen walks up to them and goes, I want to drive for your team, they would make sure he drives for their team.
Definitely. I think Max is in such a great position because he is fighting to be the face of the sport. Obviously, he's the most successful driver in recent memory. I wish I could still say Lewis, but it is Max. And like you say, he can walk into any team right now. He has basically all 11 teams. If he wanted to go drive for Cadillac, he'd go drive for him. You know what I mean? Like, he could go anywhere. I don't think he'd go Cadillac. Let me just say that now. But
well, that's another rumour mill we can start. Get that on social media
sure.
circulating.
Let's just spread every rumour we can. Look, I think Lewis Hamilton is going to Red Bull. Thank you, commenter. Anyway, so
yeah,
I just, he can go into any team. He will be a team leader at any team. I think the only team he wouldn't be a team leader at is Mercedes if they did keep Russell, because he's been there for so long. He's been in that academy for so long. And it'd be tough to kind of push him off his throne there. Though I do have to say, the fact that we're questioning whether it's going to be Kimi or George kind of says a lot about where it kind of stands between Mercedes and Russell, I think. Because I think if they hadn't promoted Antonelli so hastily, I think people are going, wow, if you're bringing Verstappen in, why would you have a rookie over Russell? But then you look at the history of the two drivers, you look at the history of the team with Hamilton and Rosberg. Do they want to recreate that with two drivers who already have bad blood and they're not even in the same team yet? I mean, we can kind of transition on to Russell now, which I think is the more interesting point. I mean, I've had more chats about George Russell than I have Max Verstappen, if I'm completely honest, because I don't remember a time where you've had two world champions in the sport, possibly, obviously we don't know this for sure, but if it does happen, move teams and displace one of the most highly rated drivers on the grid who isn't accredited enough to prove themselves to go straight into another top team. And by that I mean, obviously we had Sainz last year, and he's a great driver, obviously the only non-Red Bull driver to win in 2023. But there was no room anywhere. Mercedes didn't jump on him. No other team actually jumped on him apart from Williams. I think there was a talk with Alpine, if I remember, from Drive to Survive, but that might have just been bogus, who knows. So we're seeing it again this year, but almost the next era, if that makes sense. Because you've got two younger drivers. Obviously, they're not young. They're not the 18-year-olds that we're seeing coming into sport right now. But you've got a younger version of this where you've got Max Verstappen. He's going into Merck. He's displaced George Russell. Obviously, we're assuming it's going to be George that doesn't stick alongside. And now George has to find a seat where, because we've got a regulation change, a lot of people kind of did their contracts last year setting up ready for next year. So if you look at Sauber, they're going into next year with Hulkenberg and Bortoletto unless they break one of those contracts. So Russell he's been put in a bad position because no matter where he goes, he's looking for a team to want him so much, they're going to break a contract with another driver unless if he goes to Alpine or Cadillac. So it's a tough position for him. Obviously, we don't know fully if he's going to go, because you'd have to argue he is, well, I don't think there's any debate that he's a better driver over Kimi Antonelli, but Toto has so much faith in Antonelli, and he was so up for putting him in the car, and he's put so much faith in him. Why would you bring him up for a season to drop him? And I don't see any space for Kimi on this grid away from Mercedes. I feel like it'd be really tough to get him anywhere because Toto would still want to be able to control his career. Like he'd still want to be able to look, go drive for 2 years somewhere else, come back when we've got the space, and we're going to make you a championship contender. What team is there right now that he can go into? Because it's not going to be Williams. They've got Albon and Sainz. That is a great driver lineup. And that's normally where those Mercedes drivers go. I know Nick De Vries went to AlphaTauri at the time, but they lost all kind of like control over him. And I say control loosely because they don't fully control, but they lost like kind of their help towards him. And they won't want to do that with Kimi. I yaps there, so
No,
I'm
I
going to let
mean,
you move.
yeah, there's a lot to get through in that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, George is unlucky that this is the year he's having his best season in Formula One. If we had seen this from him in 23 or 24, I'd argue that maybe there's a chance he'll stay if he had continued that form. But where he's only come into this really good form this season, I don't see a world in which they keep George if Max signs for them, because there'd be no reason to. Keeping George with Max only guarantees problems, and Mercedes will not want problems. Having Antonelli there, Max and Kimi appear to get on well. Antonelli is looking like the man Toto is putting as the future prospect. George was that person once, but times change quick, and maybe where he spent so long in Williams, maybe that jeopardised him a bit. So, I mean, it's tough for George, and it will be really unfortunate for him if he gets stuck in an Alpine, unless Alpine become amazing. But, timing is half the game in this sport, and he might have just come into his prime at the wrong time. I mean, I will just say Max Verstappen is 27 years of age, so anyone watching, that is still young. Like, in terms of people, still young. So don't worry, we're not calling people old. It's just obviously we're seeing the grid get younger and younger as time goes on. We're seeing so many teenagers, early 20s on the grid now. 27, despite it still being young, is looking older. But then we also have the contrast of Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, who should be claiming their pension by our paradigm of motorsport careers, but are still here, still performing. It's tough for George, yeah, but the smart move. And if I was Toto in this position, I would be doing what he would be planning on doing, probably, in having Max and Kimi as your lineup for 26.
I mean, like you said, they have what seems to be such a strong relationship off the grid. It's almost like a perfect storm for him. He goes, right, out of all this chaos, I bring Verstappen in. They're next to Kimi. They're great friends already. They'll gel really well. They'll work together. It'll be great. We'll have that first and second driver dynamic still, because I think they try and avoid that equal status at all costs. And it just works perfectly for them. And the only real loser is George Russell. But if you're Toto Wolff, you're a businessman, you're a stakeholder in Mercedes, your wealth literally depends on how your team performs. So as someone who has money in that team, you're not going to go, I feel bad for George. I've literally built up his whole career and I'm going to drop him, but I can sign the best driver in the world right now and put him next to someone who is really good. They get along really well, and he's going to be a future champion one day, I believe. Why would you get rid of that guy for George Russell when there's bad blood between those two, and you've already dealt with that with Rosberg and Hamilton, which I think, I mean, no team wants to go through that dynamic. There was a massive kind of, I mean, it just wasn't a good dynamic to be in, really, for any team. No one would want to be in that. So it just works out too perfectly for for Mercedes in that sense. Now, obviously, focusing where rumours for George, obviously Alpine's probably the main one. Cadillac has had a couple shouts, I just don't see it. I saw an Audi shout, which would mean dropping one of Bortoleto or Hulkenberg. See, Hulkenberg just had his podium, probably having the best season he's had. You could argue ever,
I
based
think it
on the
would have
car
to be
that he's
ever.
in.
I mean, just based
Yeah,
on the podium alone.
yeah. I mean, yeah. You gotta look at that and you go. You've got an F2 champion who won F2 and F3 in his first year, and you've got Nico Hulkenberg who is still improving, still doing a great job. Who do you get rid of out of there to put Russell in? I mean, obviously, as a Gabriel Bortoleto kind of, I'm building a big affinity for him. I'd say Bortoleto, but it'd be such a shame to get rid of Hulkenberg after what great performances he's been putting in this year.
Mm, yeah. I mean, it would be tough,
Mm.
but I don't know if Alpine would go for George.
In what way? I feel
I think,
this is
I
the
think purely from a financial standpoint, I don't see Alpine having the financial muscle to attract a driver of that caliber.
that's the thing. That's something we don't really think about. Russell will not be cheap.
No.
Obviously, the main man at Mercedes, he's not going to be a cheap driver at all. Um, yeah, I didn't even think about financial wise, and I guess that's another reason why you kind of discount Cadillac as well, because as much as they'll want a top driver in their teams, I think they'll go for maybe I don't see them going for a rookie, but I could see them going for two drivers that maybe can help R&D side. Obviously, we've got some rumors coming up, which maybe would back my point up. But yeah, it's tough. I do think George is an underrated driver. Obviously, he's getting his flowers this year. But I mean, you beat Hamilton in your first year in a Mercedes. Obviously, he didn't do one in the second year, but then he won a he beat him again in the third year. You also have your one and only chance in a race winning car in Sakir in 2020. Yes, 2020. And he almost won that race, got taken out twice. Well, taken out of it twice due to punches and whatsoever, which obviously led to Perez winning. Um, I'll just shout it out because I know Bradley will love that one. So, like, he is a great driver, and I don't think people give him the plaudits for it because obviously I rate him really highly because, I mean, F2 champion, he's beat a 7-time world champion across the season twice, and he almost won his first opportunity to win a race. You know, so like he's got some great credentials there, just not the big one, which is world champion. Because I think even as a one-time world champion, you could argue he could walk into any team.
Mm.
But because he doesn't have that, he's in the same situation as Sainz from last year, and we're looking at this grid going, who would take the hit for him? It's a tough one. It
Yeah.
really is.
I mean, I look at the grid and I feel like the only team, other than the top teams that won't sign him because they don't need to, other than
Mm.
maybe Red Bull,
Yeah.
the only other team that potentially has the financial muscle is either Aston,
Yeah.
which I don't see
Do they
because
get
I
rid of
don't see the space
Alonso?
for him. Alonso won't go
I
until he
don't think so.
retires, and
Yeah.
I think Lawrence would want another world champion to sign as his teammate, which is obviously why Max to Aston
Mm.
rumours have been going about, but that's not
Yeah.
happening. Um, or potentially, depending on how big they're in on it, is out, like you said, Audi. but I don't see a spot from there either.
No, that's
I
the
think
issue
they're
we're having.
committed.
Carry on. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think they're very much committed to the two drivers they've got. The two drivers have been performing well enough that I wouldn't be able to justify replacing them. And so, if George doesn't get in at Red Bull, I mean, much like I've said with Yuki, I think it's Red Bull or bust. If Max leaves Red Bull, for George, it's Red Bull or bust for 2026.
Which is crazy. Obviously, I think with Horner going, it might be more likely because obviously, I think there was a lot to say that Horner and Russell did not get along at all. It's such a weird position for Russell to be in because I think if you looked at his results from this year on the sheet and said this guy's not going to have a drive next year, you'd go, why not? You know what I mean? So this is just like such a crazy position to be in. I'm actually gonna flip the script a little bit here and talk about one of my favorite rumors I've seen, but it's just too perfect to where it'd be an F1 manager sort of curated. Oh, this would make so much sense. It'd be brilliant to the point where it just wouldn't happen. So I'm going to walk you through this one, and Bradley, just give me your reactions to this. So obviously, there's a driver out of contract at the end of the season in a certain Ferrari car, Charles Leclerc. Obviously, you've got 2022 where Verstappen and Leclerc had that championship fight. Didn't really have any issues. They caused each other to be better than they've ever been. Arguably for Leclerc, I mean, he made a lot of mistakes that year. But what if Leclerc and Verstappen were both in the Mercedes? First of all, this is where it gets a bit. This isn't a realistic thing for me, so like, bear with. And then Kimi Antonelli, the Italian, goes to the Italian team of Ferrari alongside Lewis Hamilton. And then you've got Russell going to Red Bull. Oh, wait, sorry, actually, no. This is where it gets even weirder. Sorry. Oscar Piastri to Red Bull and George Russell into the McLaren alongside Lando. This is one of the rumours I've seen, but it just seems too perfect to me. And it seems like an F1 manager sort of, oh, this happened because I thought out in my head and this is the storyline I want. It just seems too perfect.
Yeah, I see no reason for like all of those moves. So we had,
It's a lot of moving parts.
yeah, so hang on. So we had Antonelli going to Ferrari, which I don't see because there's no
I
reason
don't
for them
see.
to sign him. And if Leclerc was to
Apart
leave, I
from he's
don't think they'd
Italian.
go for him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but other than that, no affinity with Ferrari. I feel like there's other candidates they'd pursue. We
Yeah.
had Piastri going to Red Bull for absolutely no reason,
Yeah.
given he's currently in the quickest car. We had Russell in the McLaren for why the hell not? And where did we have Leclerc?
Mercedes.
So we had Leclerc. So Max stays at Red Bull.
No. Max goes to Mercedes as well. So you've got
Oh right,
Verstappen and
okay. So it's
Leclerc at
Max and
Merc.
Leclerc. So it's Max and Leclerc at Merc.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I don't like it.
Obviously, the biggest thing to break this rumor is Piastri has literally just signed a McLaren contract. To break that contract, you would be talking tens of millions to break that contract because it's so early on.
Yeah,
Obviously, everything else, there's so many moving parts. I just don't see it. But I really wanted to point it out because I did think it was a pretty cool rumor, but it's just too much. But it's one of those where it's like, if that happened, it'd be insane and it'd be really cool. But it's just almost too perfect.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so I think, is there anything else you want to talk about George wise? I feel like we've covered everything there.
No, I'm happy with George. I mean, I feel like he's all rustled out.
He's all, yeah. I don't know what to add to that. I'll just leave it there. Let's move on to Cadillac. Obviously, there's plenty of driver links for them. I'm going to go in the opposite order to what Bradley's given on the little script I've got next to me here. I'm going to talk about Bottas first. Obviously, he did put out that little video out of him like looking at the Cadillac. Oh, that's a nice seat. Or don't know if I want to sit in it yet, sort of thing. He might be trolling, but if it's not a troll and we come back to this in like 4 months and he's at that team, it'd be one of the best like driver foreshadowing videos I've ever seen in my life. And of course, it'd be Valtteri Bottas. Do you think this is nailed on from that video? Like, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, who really knows at this point? 'Cause there's obviously all the talks of him potentially replacing Colapinto at Alpine, which if he does that, screws Russell over even more as a side point. But yeah, I think if he is to join Cadillac, that is the single best social media post I think I'll ever see in
Yeah,
regards to anything. Because it's such a great Valtteri kind of thing to do. And
yeah,
I just love the man. He gives great vibes. Do I think he left the sport too early? Not necessarily. I mean, he had a good run. I think 2024 wasn't that great of a year for him. I know the car wasn't great,
mm,
but it's interesting. I'm more inclined to comment on his Cadillac rumours depending on what happens at Alpine, because we could see him in the Alpine,
yeah.
which I would say would possibly be a better seat for him to be in anyway, because Cadillac is a complete unknown. Alpine, obviously getting Merc engines next year, could be quite a competitive top midfield team.
It's a great point. And obviously, if he does accept that deal, that contract with Alpine, he doesn't have to wait. He will drive that car. I'd say it'd be after Belgium. I feel like we would have heard something by now if it was before Belgium.
Mm.
Maybe a swap after summer break. Obviously, we don't know for certain. It's fully rumours, but I could see it. I mean, Colapinto hasn't shone like he did with Williams. But also, you could argue, well, if you're having a Merc engine next year, he suited the Merc engine in the Williams. Do you just hold out and hope he kind of proves to be good, or do you go for Bottas? He can help in the R&D department. He'll probably crash your car a bit less. Like, it's a lot to weigh up. But I completely agree with you. I think this Alpine seat would be better for Bottas. Um, But the Cadillac, it's funny because I kind of want the Cadillac deal to happen for no other reason apart from that social media video. That's literally the only reason I'm rooting for it, is because if it happens, it's the most best social media video that's ever been released in history. Um, but yeah, it's interesting because it does all ride on the Alpine. You're very much right on that one.
Yeah. Slightly backtracking a little bit. Obviously, we do these podcasts live, so obviously people give comments and as stuff go on. We've had a question, actually quite linked to Bortoletto. Do we see him staying in the Audi era? I mean, obviously, like has been said, he is quite a promising driver. He's got a great junior career, but obviously has no ties to Audi. So,
Mm.
is there potential that Audi look to bring in someone that is more connected to them? Or do you reckon they'll wait and see how Bortoletto performs, and if he's good enough, they'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever,
I'd
and just keep
say
him on?
I'd say their link to a driver that's more connected to Audi is Hulkenberg, obviously being a German driver. I think that's the reason for that signing, was the
Mm.
German driver in the German car, publicity, let's have it. That's kind of what the Hulkenberg signing was. I think Bortoletto's shown promise this year. Obviously, he's had issues, as has every rookie. But since this car has become good, we've seen some great drives out of him. And you don't discount a driver that won F3 and F2 in their first year. I mean, look, you've got Leclerc, you've got Piastri, just to name a couple names, and look where they are in the sport. You've got such a hot prospect there. It'd be such a shame to let him go, especially if you're going to replace him. Because if it's not going to replace with Russell, are you going to replace him with one of like the older drivers who are great for like R&D as well, or are you going to replace him with another rookie? Like, unless it's Russell, I just see Bortoletto being like a shoe in with this team, like his
Mm.
contract already says. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like it will just be driver performance dependent. I think, with a
Mm,
few seasons with Hulkenberg as a teammate, it's a great role model to have, and that can potentially help when Hulkenberg eventually decides to retire. Uh,
mm,
Bortoleto can hopefully step in and lead that team quite well after 2, 3 seasons. And
yeah.
I feel like Bortoleto, with the talent he's had, with the junior career he has had, I think he is
Mm,
more than capable in being able to do that.
yeah. I mean, I've got no more to add to that, to be fair.
No more
Like,
to add. Shall we return to Cadillac then?
let's return to Cadillac. I think we've kind of talked about all of Bottas as well. I don't think there's much more to
Yes.
talk about in that space. So, shall we move over
No.
to a potential
I'm.
teammate?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'd say we'll Bottas down.
Yeah. What is it with these today, man? Anyway, obviously, there has been some links, I think, for quite a while now. Sergio Perez to Cadillac. This year possibly marks the year that a driver that's not in Formula One has increased their value within Formula One tenfold.
Mm.
Because people look at the drivers they've thrown into that second seat that we all slated Perez for last season, and they go, wow, Perez actually did a good job after we slated him for all that time. His value's gone up a lot. Obviously, he is great sponsorship wise. He had a big Kit Kat sponsorship just before he got announced as not driving for the team, which is quite unfortunate timing. But it's a great situation for a new team. Experienced driver. He raced at a top team very recently. His value has gone up somehow while not being in the sport, and they don't have to pay to break a contract to get him. And he has sponsorship money. What more do you want out of a driver? Like, tons of pluses. What do you think about
And
this
he's
one?
a very, very competent midfield driver, as we've seen from his years in Force India. Which,
It's
given where
just
Cadillac
it's
will
fun.
likely be in their first season, I think Perez is a great pickup and
Mm,
would be the first man I'd look to. I know his Red
yeah.
Bull time wasn't amazing, but I think he could do very well in leading a team in a midfield place, which is where I think Cadillac will be initially.
Mm-hmm.
Get them in
I
there,
mean, yeah.
steady the ship. I think Perez would do a wonderful job.
Do you think for Cadillac, this is a question I got from Jake. Shout out to Jake. Um, do you think Cadillac go for the normal older, experienced driver, young driver under the wing, or do you think they literally go for two older, experienced drivers who will do a job straight away, kind of like the Bottas and Perez, if both of these moves do work out in Cadillac's favour?
I'm really not sure
Mm.
because I feel like Bottas Perez is the obvious lineup, but I also think it's quite a boring lineup, if you get what I'm saying. Like,
Mm.
it's essentially two of the same driver, if you get what I mean, in the essence of they're two older, experienced drivers who have their place in a top team and have performed in the midfield before,
Yeah.
and they both will need to be replaced at some point
Mm.
in the not too distant future. And if they don't have a lot of pull from performances in those initial years, it might be hard to then entice a better driver.
Yeah.
So I think potentially going for that younger driver potentially gives them just a little bit of security in terms
Mm-hmm.
of not needing to then find a replacement in 2 years because
Yeah.
both drivers have retired or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the move I would go for is signing one of Perez and Bottas. And if I had to pick, I would pick Perez.
I
Um,
agree.
and then potentially going for a younger, not necessarily an experienced driver. You can still get a
Mm.
younger, experienced driver.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's rumours going around. I mean, who knows at this stage? It's exciting. I love having a new team on the grid. It just opens up more possibilities. And it would be a shame for it to just be, oh, here's all the 2025 rookies plus most of the 2024 grid again.
Yeah. I
If
think just to kind of throw some names out there, some great drivers that could go into this car who are rookie, who would be rookie kind of situation. You've got Paul Aaron. I think he would be a great pick, to be honest. So you've got Luke Browning, who isn't going to get into that Williams seat anytime soon unless one of those drivers leaves. So it's almost perfect for Luke Browning. You're going to have to remind me, there's a McLaren youngster who's doing really well right
Alex
now.
Dunn,
Alex Dunn is
number
almost perfect.
17.
It's almost perfect. That's why I remembered 17. I was like, he's in the McLaren, he's doing great in
Yeah.
McLaren Academy, he's doing a great job. And I was like, this is kind of perfect for him because Piastri and Lando is such a solid lineup. And if neither of those move, it's like there's no room at the end for him unless he wants to kind of be a Felipe Drugovich sort of situation, which I don't think any driver wants to be. So it kind of would be amazing for his career. It's just whether Cadillac go for it. Just throw two more names in there. Obviously, you've got Felipe Drugovich, but I think this is so far out. I'd love to see it, but
That is rogue. I would also like to say it, but that's rogue.
Yeah, I'd love to see it, but he's also not raced competitively in a Formula C in what 3-4 years, maybe 3 years,
3 years,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, and then last one, I could see this being very likely. Actually, Americans love having an American driver. It's an American team, and they could do a lot with Logan Sargent. I wouldn't
That
want to
was
see
not
it.
the name I was expecting to be pulled out there. What?
I wouldn't want to see it, but like
I was fully expecting just you to name Colton Herta or an IndyCar driver or someone of that
no,
caliber.
I
Nah,
think it would
Logan.
be. I think it would be Logan Sargent just for the fact he has Formula One experience. Bear in mind, not a great deal, and also doesn't. His numbers don't shine either, but it's an American team.
I've shown
He
more
is
promise
kind
in
of.
F1 car than Logan Sargent.
Yeah, but he is also an American. An American team might go, that would be great for us. Let's bring him in. So
And
like
has
he's
been
not
stooped that low.
fully out of it, but personally, I would like to see one of the F2 drivers I've named, or and Perez or Bottas. Mix of those
Yeah,
five in some sort of way. Probably not two F2 drivers. You'd probably struggle. Um,
yeah,
let's just get an amalgamation of that sort of lineup, and that would be pretty good.
yeah. I mean, again, we're seeing a similar issue with Drugovich potentially this year with Richard for sure, where he could win the title and not end up in F1 purely on the basis that it's taken him so long to win the title. And that's
Yeah.
not necessarily dismissing the talent of the grid he's facing at the minute, because Alex Dunn looks very promising, and there's other drivers that look promising in that grid as well. It's just he's taken so long to get there that will he really speed up to Formula One quick enough? Which I think is probably the main issue with Drugovich, and that's why he hasn't been put in an F1 seat. No matter how dominantly Drugovich won that title, it still took him 3 seasons to get there. So in F1, you don't have 3 seasons, essentially. You need to be performing pretty quickly. So those two are drivers that are going to struggle based on how long it took them rather than their actual talents. Dunn, I mean, Cadillac establishing a connection with a top team would be a good move, which is why I'd eliminate Browning, just because establishing a connection with a team that's likely to be a competitor potentially with you next year doesn't really work. Because if Browning's performing really well and beating the Williams will just go, oh yeah, we're taking him.
Yeah.
And then they've lost a driver that's been doing really well for them. Where we've done, if McLaren are still a top team, that becomes a more feasible route for them potentially. And obviously, if the McLaren Academy continues to perform, obviously we've seen their influence in F2 and F3. It could be a good route for Cadillac to potentially pursue. So I think if we had to pick one, I would pick Alex Dunn. Personally, just because I think for Cadillac it's a more feasible route in terms of not really competing against McLaren. So McLaren won't just go, oh yeah, I'm nabbing your driver because you're beating us. And they have a chance to have that driver for a good few years until Norris or Piastri decide to move on.
I completely agree. I've got enough to add to that. I'd love I'd
I'd
to
say
see Dunn
we're
in that car.
done with that.
Love that. Well, actually, I'm going to backpedal a little bit. Obviously, talking about for sure, Drogovic. I think when you look at those two drivers, and obviously probably not getting a foot in just because of how long they spent in F2, Mick Schumacher has obviously been a name thrown in
Hmm.
with supposed positive talks with Cadillac. I kind of link Mick Schumacher to these two drivers. Obviously, he won in his second year, but he was
Yeah.
always known as someone who struggled to adapt to a car, and we saw that in F1. And he didn't really adapt well enough to the F1 kind of circus. And would it be a risk for Cadillac to bring him in more than a reserve driver? You know what I mean? Like, does is it worth bringing Mick Schumacher in after his Haas stint and putting him in the car rather than as a reserve where he's reserved for Mercedes? And he did, I mean, he was pretty popular as Mercedes reserve, but I don't think anybody kind of shouting for him to take a seat at the moment. What do you think?
I mean, with Mick, it's tricky. I mean, he had a terrible circumstance for his F1 career for the most part. 2021, the
Mm.
Haas was god awful. 2022, it was not amazing. He second half of the season was quite decent, had a few points finishes, and was relatively quicker than Magnussen by the end of 2022. Just Gunter Steiner had lost relationships with him, and he wanted to pursue Hulkenberg. It happened too late for Mick to really get anywhere. I feel like Mick is someone that potentially has unfinished business, and
Yeah.
I think his stint doesn't necessarily say the whole story, and so it's potentially a rogue option for Cadillac. But obviously, like we're saying, it's someone younger, still has F1 experience. I mean, is still actively racing. I mean, not obviously not in a Formula car, but is still actively racing. Obviously connections with Alpine as well, but obviously if Bottas goes there, that's that pretty much done. Um, but he has connections, and the likelihood is it will bring media attention. It will bring stories Cadillac's way if they were to sign him, purely based on his surname, obviously. But there's potential there that it could work out in both their favours if Mick can perform.
I think sponsorship wise, it's a. I don't think Mick has much of a foot to stand on because although he will bring sponsorship with him, when you look at the other options, so will they. You know,
Mm.
like you've got two very marketable drivers in Bottas and Perez who are probably the front runners for this seat. They both have so much marketability in different ways. And normally, if it was like Mick versus an F2 driver, I completely agree with you. Like his marketing is going to be something that will bring him in, but I just don't know. Obviously, it'd be. I don't get me wrong. Like I'm not a Mick Schumacher hater. I would love nothing more to see Mick come back in and actually do a great job. I just think there's so much talent around Formula One right now that I don't know whether he deserves to come back in. And I don't know if that's really mean to say.
I would rather have someone like Mick, who only had 2 seasons in the sport and never really
Mm,
justified in really getting rid of him, given how comparatively he was probably quicker than K-Mag by the end of 2022.
yeah,
I'd rather have someone like that in the seat than someone like Bottas, who has had like 12 seasons in the sport and has
yeah,
had a good career of it.
mm, yeah,
And the risk of, let's say, worst case scenario, Mick doesn't perform. Mick not performing, you can sort out, and it's just a continuation from his previous stint. Bottas not performing in the Cadillac seat ruins what was a pretty decent career for a pretty decent driver.
yeah.
Whereas Mick, there's a risk no matter who they pick. There
Mm,
is always a risk, and they can't avoid that. But Mick has less collateral essentially,
Mhm.
because then basically, if you put Bottas in the car and he performs terribly, people might turn around and say the car's terrible. If you put Mick in, you've got that failsafe of Mick didn't perform too well in the Haas car for the most part, and so we'll see what a better driver can do with the Cadillac.
Yeah.
So it depends on how they look at it. It's potentially a safer option for their own reputation as the brand and the car.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, until something's signed and confirmed, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I would ask you right now, who do you think is going to be in that seat? But maybe it's obvious. Like just quick fire, name your two.
Uh,
Just
if
based
I was a
on
bet,
rumors right now.
if I was a betting man, Perez and Bottas.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that might be quite an obvious one, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. All right, let's move on
Yeah.
from Cadillac now. As one
Who
wise man
does
said.
who you
Also,
want to see differ from who you think will be in the car?
yes,
Who
yes,
do
it
you want
does.
to see in the car?
Or like Perez and Bottas, I can pick either. I'd be happy with either of them. I would like to see Dunn in that car because I don't want what happened to Dragovic to happen to him. So I'd love to see Dunn get that opportunity. Do I think it will happen? No, absolutely not. I think like you've got Mick Schumacher, which I think is more likely than Dunn, and then you've got two drivers who are linked very heavily already with Bottas and Perez. There's just too many drivers ahead of him, I think, out of the rumours we've got when drivers tend to be announced in a couple of weeks' time from when we're recording this. I don't see the narrative changing massively for Dunn to be in that car. Sadly.
No, no, that's fine. That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, for me,
Does it change for you? Yeah.
obviously, it does change. For me, who I think will be in the car, Perez and Bottas. Who I want to be in the
Yeah.
car, Perez and Yuki.
Oh, that's how does that work for Red Bull then? Just, I mean,
They
explain your
get if
walkthrough.
assuming Max leaves, they're completely screwed. Um,
Yeah,
but before he was announced as moving to Red Bull, when he was still in the V Carb, if he had still been there mid-season and we did a mid-season's grid prediction, I would have
yeah,
put Yuki at Cadillac. Purely because I think that's a good opportunity for him to get out of the Red Bull program,
mm,
make a career for himself,
yeah,
and if he can do well there, he then builds his own portfolio, his own stock, as opposed to just being, oh, he's in the sport because he was a Honda driver. So that's what I feel like a lot of the criticism is of Yuki at the minute, is that he was only
hmm,
in the sport because of Honda.
yeah,
And if he can build that career elsewhere outside the Red Bull program,
mm,
it gives then him a chance to flourish and move to other teams potentially in the future.
yeah.
So
Do you
that would
think?
be
Sorry, carry on.
that. I was just going to say that would be my like dream pick if I could choose where drivers go and move them around like chess pieces.
Do you think this season at Red Bull, even though we know it's the car and it's not him, do you think this has damaged his market?
Absolutely, you can't be performing this bad and not have it damage your reputation
Mm,
when, even though people know it's the car, your teammate's still winning races.
yeah,
There
it's
is
a
a
really
limit.
tough one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's tough for him. It's tough for the team as well. But ultimately, we've seen it ruin careers before. I mean,
Mhm.
you just have to try and take it on the chin. But where at the stage of the career that Yuki is at, he doesn't have the luxury of an Albon or a Lawson, where he can go rediscover his form elsewhere and come back and build a career like Albon's done.
Mm,
I mean, even Gasly potentially got lucky. I think that Yuki was his teammate in Yuki's early years, so I think that helped him build back a reputation. I mean, obviously
yeah,
he's done well in Alpine since, and so full credit to him. But like with Gasly, like with Albon, I think the only way to rescue this now is getting out of the Red Bull program entirely.
Yeah. No, for sure, I agree with that. I think this is kind of another George Russell situation in terms of if you are left without a seat, where do you go? And obviously, you do have Cadillac. I think Yuki is more in the pay grade that Cadillac can afford. So I don't know. Maybe Cadillac is like maybe Cadillac is an option for him. Are Cadillac going to pursue a driver who is struggling to get out of Q1 when his world champion teammate is fighting for pole? It'd be a gamble for Cadillac, sadly, and it has kind of led to Yuki kind of becoming a career suicide for a team to go for, which is such a shame because if you look at the first 2 rounds from this year, we're going, wow, Yuki's actually making a statement right now to be kind of one of the best drivers that hasn't had a chance at a top team yet. Could the next move possibly springboard him to possibly being in the shout for that position? I don't think anybody was kind of saying he needs to be in the top team, but I think a lot of people were saying this next move could define him as someone who is in the shout for a top team. And I think with this Red Bull move, the struggle that he's had, I think this has damaged his career possibly beyond repair.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I think that's kind of everything we want to talk about today. We've had so many rumours. I mean, it's kind of been weird because the last 2 days we haven't had new rumours to talk about. We're going, wow, this is what it's normally like, isn't it? So yeah, we had a lot to go through today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and us talk about these rumours. If you have any kind of thoughts or ideas, we'd love to know them. We have a TikTok page. If you're on TikTok, come and have a look. Little cheeky plug for you. Go and watch the stuff. We've got some funny stuff. If you want to see some great mugs of Bradley with some memes behind them, it's the perfect place for you. I mean, that's the only reason I'm there, and I'm one part of the GoudaGP. And so yeah, I mean, let us know in the comments. I mean, you can even, I think the podcast has comments on some platforms. Just let us know.
Spotify, I know it does. I mean, obviously
Spotify
YouTube,
does.
if you're watching the video,
If you're watching us
comments
on
there.
YouTube, comment. We'd love to know. We'd love talking to Formula One fans, and I mean that was a big takeaway for us actually from Silverstone was this is awesome that we are surrounded by so many F1 fans. So if you have any thoughts, ideas, theories, literally anything, whether you've heard something that we didn't talk about today, literally just let us know. We would love to talk about this more. Summer break's coming up. We're going to be talking about these rumors more and more and more. So yeah, just let us know. We'd love to hear it. And away from plugging literally every other platform that we're on, I believe that's everything for today. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, maybe just drop us a little 5-star review if you're on your listening platforms. It does help us out. If you're on YouTube, drop us a like, subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It also helps us out there as well. I'm going to stop throwing call to you and I'm going to let you get on with your day. Thank you guys so much. Hope you have a Gouda day and we will see you next time.
Ciao.